Slavery is back.
Welcome to a place where private business profit from a captive labour force, yet pennies are spent on medical services to a population in which the Indigenous, the poor and the mentally ill are overrepresented. Where isolation, humiliation and degradation are facts of life. Welcome to prison.
It depends who's telling the story, I suppose. The prisoners would have one view, the people who work in the prison system would have another, and I think it's up to people to decide where the truth is.
Give government propaganda and the media spin doctors the flick. And check out Doin' Time for news, views and tunes on prison issues from Guantanamo Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Doin' Time show. This is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. This is Marisa and I'll be taking you through until 5 o'clock this evening. First up on the show, we're going to be talking to Belinda, who is very much one of the daughters of Aunty Tanya Day, indeed one of the loved ones that she's been surrounded by during this very gruelling inquest that has been happening. Tanya Day actually died in a police cell, and she died of a brain hemorrhage. And I wanted to start off with a quote from a statement of the Day family as part of the introduction, and it says, "In the last 30 years, hundreds of Aboriginal people like our mum have died at the hands of the police, yet no police officer has ever been held criminally responsible." And I just wanted to go on to say that Tanya died in hospital on the 22nd of December 2017 of a brain hemorrhage sustained when she fell and hit her head in the cells of Castlemaine Police Station 70 days earlier. She was in the cells because she had been arrested for public drunkenness after being removed from police from a V-line train from Bendigo to Melbourne. And just a little bit of a belated warning that there will be audio images of people that have died, Torres Strait Islanders and Aboriginal people, in this broadcast. So we're going to be speaking to Belinda about that. The Doin' Time show has covered this inquest quite extensively over the last couple of years or so, and we'll be speaking to Belinda. We actually had April on the show, I'd say a couple of months ago now, when there was a live stream in April. We'll be speaking to Belinda shortly, not only about the background to the inquest, but also looking at the recommendations that the coroner actually put forward. One of the main things that we'll be speaking with Belinda about is looking at the fact that police have not been prosecuted. Police have definitely not been criminally held to account in regards to what happened with Aunty Tanya. So this show is really about honouring Tanya, but also honouring as well all deaths in custody, and mainly Aboriginal deaths in custody. So Tanya Day was the case was referred to the Department of Public Prosecutions to determine whether criminal negligence has occurred. And indeed, the police haven't been held responsible for that. After Belinda, we'll be speaking with Latoya Rule, and she is the sister of Wayne fellow Morison, and we'll be speaking to her about an update that has happened with another inquest. As the gruelling 2-month inquest continues, the family of Aboriginal man Wayne fellow Morison wants someone to be held accountable for his death. Okay, so without any further ado, we're going to be speaking now with Belinda.
I really am not understanding why people aren't seeing the fact that prisons
are an integral part of a public health response to a pandemic. Like you, I'm really concerned about whether the data is being released very honestly about illnesses within prison. I have suspicions it's not, but really we need very strong leadership in this country that actually cares about people inside our most vulnerable populations inside. That's what we need, and that's not what we're getting right now.
We need to keep radical voices on air. Subscribe now.
Go to 3cr.org.au/subscribe or call the station on 9419 8377.
And you're back with the Doing Time show, and I'm hoping that I'm speaking with Belinda. Hello, Belinda.
Hi, Marisa.
It's lovely to have you. So just to remind listeners, first of all, that we're in the middle of a pandemic and there's a lot of technical things that are happening with all the radio stations, I think. So, Belinda, sorry for any technical difficulties in advance, given that I'm remotely producing the show from home.
We'll see what we can do.
That's right. Okay, so, Belinda, let's start off just talking a little bit about what's happened with your mum, and I believe that Caitlin English, the coroner, investigating Tanya's death in custody, and she has referred the case to the Department of Public Prosecutions to determine whether criminal negligence has occurred. Can you talk about that, and also just talk a little bit about your mum? She was a proud Yorta Yorta woman, wasn't she?
She was. She was very proud of her culture and her heritage. And unfortunately, that's something that she was targeted for. So it's really unfortunate that it turned out the way that it did. So Mum was, as you mentioned, was travelling on a V-line bus from Echuca to Melbourne, and was, I guess, identified as an unruly passenger by a V-line employee, and police were called, and she was removed and subsequently arrested for public intoxication. We were told that she had to be held in the cell for at least a minimum of 4 hours. There is no written rule to that. That's just something that we were verbally told, and multiple police officers told us that. So, they assured us that they were caring for her and looking after her well-being. When it was close to the 4 hours and Warren was our brother, Mum's son was on his way to collect her, we made some contact with the police, and they advised that the ambulance had arrived because Mum was a bit sleepy, etc. Very downplayed, not really giving us much information about what condition Mum was in. Or so by the time Warren got there, Mum had already been transferred to Bendigo. We all, I guess, made our way to Bendigo to see Mum, and were devastated when we walked in and saw her on a gurney with, breathing apparatus, a massive bruise on her forehead, and from there airlifted to Melbourne to St Vincent's, and unfortunately 17 days later we lost Mum due to the injuries that she sustained while she was in police custody, and that was from multiple falls against the concrete wall. And like you said, the coroner did, and we thank the coroner for all the listening that she did of us as a family, and understanding how we were feeling, and really her being open to what we were saying. So she really took the time to listen to us as a family, and ultimately she made a decision that she thought that an offence may have occurred. So a referral was made to the Department of Public Prosecutions for the two police officers to determine whether a criminal offence had occurred. So we got advice last week. The DPP has reviewed that referral, and they have decided not to proceed with charges.
That is indeed unfortunate, Belinda.
Yeah, it's devastating for us as a family. You always hope that you're going to be able to get justice, and you hope that the system will sort of wake up to itself and see Mum's story for what it is, and see the truth behind what happened and what didn't happen. And unfortunately, it's just as many before us, as many families had to go through looking for justice, and it just seems that you get onto the doorstep and you get knocked back, and So us as a family, we're just trying to comprehend what that means, because ultimately that's what we want. We want someone to be held accountable, for what happened to Mum, because it should never have happened. And if we can't look back and really grasp what happened and learn from it, then how are we going to make positive change?
Despite the coroner recommending that a falls risk assessment be placed in the Victoria Police Manual Guidelines for holding people in custody, and that police training be updated with reference to the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody, and that both the Victoria Police and V-Line training manuals be subject to an independent human rights review, would it be fair to say that systemic racism played a part in this whole scenario?
Absolutely. We have no doubt as a family that Mum was targeted for being an Aboriginal woman. And I think that's very clear in terms of an incident happened earlier in the, I think it was after Mum was taken into custody, where they actually went and picked up a non-Aboriginal woman who was intoxicated at a pub and drove her to a residence in Castlemaine and dropped her off and made sure that she was safe and sound. Yet they pulled Mum off the train when she was not disturbing or hurting or being aggressive to anybody, was in no way unruly, and decided that a cell was the safest place for her to be.
And the woman was white that came off the train?
Yes, as far as we know.
Oh, yes, this was talked about at the inquest, wasn't it?
Absolutely, it was referenced
during the course of the inquest.
Yes, yep. And there's been, a non-Aboriginal woman.
And, like the crime of public drunkenness, what I want to say here, Belinda, just to let listeners know all this and to actually highlight some of the inconsistencies here, is that the coroner in 2018, she said that there should be a recommendation that the crime of public drunkenness be abolished in Victoria. And the Andrews government has already agreed to that, hasn't he? But it still doesn't change the fact that this was racism.
That's right. And it's all good and well to foreshadow a recommendation and the government to make commitments to that. But that hasn't been implemented. That law's still there. That law is still targeting Aboriginal people. And it's something that, unfortunately, if we let that go, another family's going to have to go through what we've gone through. And that's just not good enough.
No. It certainly isn't. And, there are lots of testimonies even from the medical profession during the course of all these inquests that your mum needed to have been checked on, and that she was allegedly bleeding from the brain while she was in the cells, and it wasn't attended to.
That's right. And that's what happens when you don't fulfil your duties to look after someone when they're in your care. And that's why we know that there was negligence there, because their own policies and procedures tell them what they should be doing and they weren't adhered to. So how is that not negligence?
Exactly. And it's interesting how some of the comments that were made by the police, in particular, I believe the policewoman that was overseeing the case, I think it might have been Sergeant Neal, where it was stated that, look, all drunks act this way, and all drunks like to sleep on the floor,
Yep. Yeah, all drunks want to be, not be able to move on the floor. Had they taken any time to assess Mum prior to how she, deteriorated, it would have been very clear. We could see it. As devastating as that footage is, you can see the deterioration. And, not every drunk's like that. Not every drunk has hit their head multiple times and is suffering a brain bleed, and it's really disappointing. As, like you talk about, even the police officers, part of their, evidence was that they were asked, would you do anything differently, knowing that someone had passed? And they all said no. They'd happily do exactly the same thing, have the same outcome. And to me, that is absolutely disgusting.
It is. It is. Why was your mum taken off the train to start with? And why was she lodged in a cell? Because
they didn't follow their own policies and procedures. Because, firstly, it starts with V-Line. So the conductor, Sean Irvine, got the ball rolling. He had never kicked anyone off the train before. He'd come across aggressive, unruly people and had never decided to call the police and have them removed. But within a minute of meeting Mum, identified her as Aboriginal and unruly and had the police called to have her removed and used the words, "I want her off my train." And the sad thing is that people can't sit in a courtroom or sit in a coroner's court and own their own behaviours and how they acted on that day, because when he got there, he tried to deny everything. In his report, he identified Mum as Aboriginal. There was no doubt about that. But when he was asked about, how did you know that Tanya was Aboriginal? And he's like, I didn't. She could have been Caucasian. I'm not sure. I can't remember. Like, Mum's got clearly dark brown skin. She's clearly Aboriginal. And, he backtracked and didn't tell the truth. And that's what we've been wanting so desperately through this process, is for the truth to be told about what happened, what should have happened, what didn't happen, and some accountability. There shouldn't be too much to ask for.
Definitely there needs to be accountability, and about the fact that, the police that were actually meant to be looking after your mum kept saying again and again they wanted to respect her privacy, that they wanted to... I mean, this is not a welfare centre,
Yep. No, well, they had a duty of care, and let's be honest, they failed miserably.
And indeed, Recommendation 12 of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody stipulates that it's about considering the quality of care and treatment of people in prison.
Yeah.
And indeed in custody.
That's the problem, is there's so many recommendations that haven't been implemented. And, Victoria is way behind the eight ball in terms of abolishing, public intoxication as a crime. And, it's really good that they've committed to that. But, it's a little bit too late. But it's all right to have that commitment, but we want to see the action. Words are only words. We need action. We need it implemented. We need that law gone. We need a public health response, and we need to be looking after people that are intoxicated in public and not by putting them in a prison cell.
Belinda, are you okay? Can I proceed? Is this too much for you?
No.
Okay.
Continue.
Now, I believe that you were the one that identified your mum's body.
Well, so when Mum was in Castlemaine, she was transferred to Bendigo Hospital. So Warren was the first one to attend Bendigo Hospital.
Yep.
And subsequently myself and April and Mum's brother attended. But we were with Mum when she passed in Melbourne.
Okay.
Yep.
And because is it true that, because I just wanted to just explore with you very briefly some of the medical findings. So I believe an autopsy was conducted?
Yes, there was no choice. Given that it was a reportable death, then it was mandatory for that to happen.
Yeah, and I just want to actually say here to listeners, and correct me if I'm wrong, drawing upon the information that I heard at the inquest and that indeed was published publicly, so there were findings underlying the brain pathology that caused the brain hemorrhage, and there was cerebral hemorrhage, hematoma in the temporal lobe, and your mum wouldn't have survived. She would have had, or she could have had dysphasia, total destruction of the temporal lobe, and she would have been paralysed and disabled, correct?
Correct.
She wouldn't have been able to recover. So the best way really for her to not have died was to have not been placed in the cell.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. Had that ball not got started rolling at V-line and she'd not gone down that path, she'd be a very healthy person walking this earth today. But unfortunately, we're still in the world where racism reigns, and this is where we are.
So, in regards to the outcome that you would have sought, that you, speaking on behalf of your family, what is it that you would have liked for the police? Because we all know that it's about police investigating police.
Yeah.
There's no independent investigation here.
No, and so we've been frustrated from the very beginning in understanding the coronial process and what it means, and that independent investigation. And we really struggled with understanding how is it independent when you've got a Victoria Police member investigating their own. And we really struggled with that. And they're like, no, it is independent. But, I think it's clear that it wasn't. And I think part of the issue with the DPP and their decision is that they've made their decision on evidence and a flawed investigation. So, they can only go by what they've been handed, and that goes back to the root of the problem. Police should not be investigating police. And we need that independence. So does there need to be another body? I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but clearly the system that's currently in place is not working, and that's even shown by the recommendation from the coroner herself.
Okay, tell me about that recommendation.
Which one was it?
I think she says here that Caitlin English believes that an indictable offence may have been committed in connection to Miss Day's death.
It's more around Recommendation 2, I think it is. The Victorian government legislate that the coroner directs the coronial investigation rather than relying on the current convention with Victoria Police.
Yes.
So that's having that independence, because currently, how bizarre it is that she had an investigator that she was supposed to be directing as part of an independent investigation that had their own legal counsel, that she couldn't talk to them without the legal counsel. That's bizarre to me, but because it is a coronial responsibility, but the police had their own representation, which made it a really strange, way of working.
The police had their own representation at the inquest?
Yeah, so, obviously, Neil, Walters, and the others had representation, but the police investigator himself had his own representation as well.
That's right.
Yes.
That is bizarre.
That is bizarre, that the coroner cannot talk to her own investigator without legal counsel being present. So hence that recommendation. So clearly the coroner's court can see that there's issues here. So let's hope that something is done to address that.
I'm hoping so. And that's a really good point that you've raised, Belinda, actually, that there seems to be some inconsistency here, that the system is quite flawed, and that the coroner certainly had quite a few limitations.
That's right. And, had we had a different coroner, I suspect that we probably would have got the run-of-the-mill inquest and nothing shocking or nothing groundbreaking would have happened. I think that we were fortunate that we had Coroner English.
Yep.
And like I said, she took the time to sort of try and understand that for the family, and I think she tried to listen for Mum's voice and to understand the experience. And, I think that is shown through some of the recommendations. Like we mentioned before, we have no doubt that systemic racism played a role in the treatment that Victoria Police gave Mum. Coroner English stopped short of confirming that as part of her findings, but did indicate that Sean Irvine from V-Line certainly was impacted by, racial bias. But we believe that she could have came out and said that about Victoria Police as well, given, we mentioned earlier how they dealt with a non-Aboriginal woman and then how they dealt with Mum. I think it's pretty clear. But yes, we're fortunate enough to have Coroner English there, and I think the recommendations he's made will certainly help the process for, let's hope, there's not too many more going forward, but for those that unfortunately have to come after us and go through that horrendous coronial process.
It is indeed horrendous, and I actually commend you and your family just on how in-depth your statements have been for the media. And there's actually something here as a part of your statement that I actually quickly like to read out, which I think will really sum everything up. where you all say there has never been any doubt in our mind that Victoria Police are responsible for our mum's death. The coroner found that the police should have sought medical care rather than taking her to a cell. And you say the coroner found that once mum was in the cell, the police failed to properly check on her, treated with complacency, and breached her human rights to humane treatment and dignity.
Yep.
And it's true.
It is true. I mean, you were there throughout the coronial process, and
I was.
I was
there, all right.
See the footage. The footage is, that.
Oh, terrific.
But to sitting there and listening to statements and evidence and piecing it all together, it's very clear. And like I said, in terms of the prosecution, we're just devastated that that's the decision. And we just want some transparency about, how is that decision made? What have you considered? We certainly weren't consulted as a family. So, yeah.
The system needed to have protected her.
Well, that's, and there's, I guess, there's people in positions of power that have distrust generally of most community members, and I think that, when you hear from a police officer that, she's okay, she's fine, and we're looking after her, and we'll help her with this and that, but you fall into that authority figure and, okay, yes, they're doing the right thing, and, we can't do anything for 4 hours, so yes, this is where she needs to be, and we can't do anything about that. But, when you go from the conversation that I had with Sergeant Neil about the ambulance being there and that, mum's fine, she's breathing, her blood pressure's fine, no mention of a massive bruise to her forehead, no mention of her, sort of basically being unconscious and unresponsive, not a phone call back to say that, look, we've had to transfer her to hospital. It was all of us ringing and finding out what was going on because they didn't have the guts to ring us and tell us what was going on with mum. And they downplayed it and, how traumatising for her children to get to the hospital thinking that she's gone there because she's too intoxicated and maybe needs some fluids to feel better and that we can pick her up and then take her home. To walk in there and she's unconscious, a massive bruise on her head and needs assistance breathing.
It's absolutely horrible.
You can't, how can you downplay that and just let us walk in and just experience that firsthand thinking that everything is okay?
Correct. It's so deplorable and really the recommendations, not only have the recommendations of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody, not only have they been disrespected, if you like, and not even it hasn't even been complied with, but you've also the Charter of Human Rights, Belinda. That's
right, yeah. And we were very fortunate we're very fortunate to have a very good legal team. And yes, we're with the Human Rights Law Centre now, but prior to that we had the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service and we've had the Commission, the Human Rights Commission, come and talk at the inquest. You were there, you heard what they had to say, and it's very clear. It's very clear that mum's human rights were breached.
I was so determined to go to that inquest. I actually got up early and caught a cab every day there. I was very determined to sit through it all. It was very difficult sometimes.
Yes, yeah.
But this inquest, I think, was quite historic and it was very comprehensive. It's very good that you had a good legal team. Belinda, so basically this show is really a dedication to your mum but also to all Aboriginal deaths in custody, and I really wanted to invite you onto the show to honour your mum and to actually get her voice heard. Are there any final questions you want to make? Any comments, sorry?
No comments. I mean, I just want mum to be remembered as a person, not as a statistic. We can talk about there's been over 400 deaths, but, Tanya Louise Day was a loving mother, grandmother, sister, auntie, and very much an advocate for the Aboriginal community. And, I think we're all a little bit lost without her, but, you know, we use her strength and her resilience that she had through her life to keep moving on and to keep fighting for justice. So just, you know, as we keep saying, that just remember her as a person and not a statistic.
That's exactly right. And let's fight on, and may her death not be in vain.
That's right.
Belinda, thank you so much for coming onto the program. It was great to have you, and I hope we can have you back at some time. And I'm hoping that in the end those police are held to account. Yes, well, that's the goal. We'll keep fighting. So hopefully I can come back on the show and we can talk about them being charged. I'd love you to do that. That'd be great. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Marisa. Have a good day. Take care. Bye. Bye.
Hi, we're the Morindas, and you're listening to 3CR Community Radio 855 AM.
Fitzroy Legal Service has launched a free information and advice phone service for people who have been stopped, questioned, fined or charged for breaching COVID-19 restrictions. Have you been fined or charged under the new laws? Or stopped and questioned by police for being outside?
Call 0434 136 501. Weekdays between 9am and 5pm. That's 0434 136 501. Or head to fitzroy-legal.org.au for more information. You can also report incidents at covidpolicing.org.au.
Fitzroy Legal Service is a 3CR supporter.
And you're back with the Doing Time show. It's approximately 4:31, and pretty soon we're going to be speaking with Latoya Rule, sister of Wayne fella Morison. She's becoming quite a regular guest on this show, and I'm hoping one day we will be able to have good news. But we're going to be speaking pretty soon about her brother, and I believe that there was someone who was forced to apologise to the family. Hello, Latoya. Welcome to the program.
Hi, how are you? Thank you again for having me.
It's lovely to have you back. We're all in the middle of a pandemic at the moment, stage 4 restrictions in Victoria, but I believe Adelaide's got a different way.
Yeah, we do.
The pandemic.
Solidarity to everybody who's experiencing that at the moment, obviously. Definitely. Just, I can't fathom what it is to still be in lockdown in many ways, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
Because in Adelaide, we're kind of back to normal in many ways. We have, I think, 50 people allowed in public gatherings.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. So I
don't
even
like stage 2. Yeah.
Yeah, around there.
We have to keep going.
We do, yeah. But I see so many great efforts happening there as well, and as well solidarity to everybody in those towers. Yeah, I couldn't imagine. We all here were just really distraught and really feeling like we couldn't do anything much except obviously send money and, you know, spread the word, but we just wish that we were able to be there physically as well during that time, because that's just not okay.
No, it certainly wasn't okay, and our show has actually done quite a lot of coverage about that, where there was a big lockdown with all the towers and people. It was all people from non-English speaking backgrounds, and the operation was all police oriented. And it was just really hard. It was a very hard lockdown. It wasn't organised properly. It shouldn't have been done.
No, and racially motivated.
Yes.
You know, obviously. So, yeah. But no, good to speak to you. I'm glad we're here today to do this.
Absolutely. So, Latoya, on the 26th of September, just to refresh the memories of listeners, 26th of September 2016, your brother, who was 29 years old, and he died in the Royal Adelaide Hospital.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could just give us a little bit of an update on what's been happening lately with the inquest, and perhaps just talk about what land the whole family's from.
Yep. So essentially, I guess it's kind of where to start. So much is always happening every single month.
Yeah, that's all right.
He passed away in the Royal Adelaide Hospital, Wayne Fella Morison, after allegedly, having to be restrained after an alleged incident in Yatala Labour Prison here in South Australia on Kaurna land. And he is a father, a fisherman, an artist. I still haven't seen my niece for these almost past 4 years. Neither has the rest of my family, and that's been really hard for us. And that's one of those kind of areas that people don't think about how this stuff separates families, how it, dictates a lot of our behaviours and movements going forward as well, and how much our lives change. And so we've been in the inquest now for, like I said, almost 4 years. On the 26th of September this year, it will be 4 years. But we've just been told that our inquest won't resume. So we've been on a hold from our inquest since last year. I forget which month, but for a very long time. We won't be going back until next year now. We were supposed to be going, till mid next year, actually. Well, many reasons. Some, I guess I can't say at this stage because there's further directions hearings to be had, so we can't confirm exactly the dates for you or the months, but 2021 is what we're looking at the moment due to COVID, but also just the publicity around our case has been cited as one of the reasons why we need more space. And due to COVID, we haven't been able to do that through restrictions and, people who are wanting to sit in court. Already it's been insinuated that we shouldn't be in the room at all with corrections officers who are trying to avoid giving evidence anyway. And considering that corrections and their side, so the defence for the corrections officers, the nurse, the health service, all of those kinds of state players, there's about 30 lawyers on their side at the moment, plus 2 support people for every single correctional officer who has to give evidence. And we have about 2 to 4 lawyers at any time. And they have 3 QCs on their legal team as well, and we don't have any. That's kind of where we're at. So it's not looking great. The state's poured hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions already, into updating their systems, the reporting that's already happened. 2017, I'm sorry I'm jumping all over the place, but that's pretty much
this is good.
Why we're going over till next year. But since 2017, we've had a parliamentary inquiry into the administration of South Australian prisons that happened with a select committee. That's online if people want to look at that through the SA Parliament committee reports. Wayne's case was one of 5 to go through as particular cases to be focused on. There was a few recommendations out of that. My family and myself made, what are they called, like reports and comments and our own submissions to that inquiry. From that, Ombudsman Wayne Lyons of South Australia, so the State Ombudsman, chose to pick up Wayne's case himself and started an inquiry and investigation in 2017. And just last week, just past, we received his report. So it's very timely that you called. We've received
so the State Ombudsman wrote a report, did he?
He did, 110 pages long.
Wow. And when did that report come out, Latoya?
Just last week on Wednesday. Sorry.
Oh, good.
Thursday. It was Thursday.
Lovely.
Yep. And I can send you that one, but again, that's online under the SA Ombudsman's reports. It's the first latest one. And that was from his own kind of interest in the case. So he wasn't forced to do this as any kind of part of his reporting. He chose to pick it up due to the nature of the kind of case and how...
I'd really like to set up another time with you in the next couple of weeks to discuss that report. That would be very timely.
Yeah,
sorry?
Yeah, I've got the report in front of me, but I
Lovely,
can quickly sum it up for people if they want, and we can go into it in more detail at another time.
Yep.
So essentially there were 17 recommendations to come from the report. It's 110 pages. Some of the main things that one of the main things that came from the report was the failure to raise a NOC, what we call a notification of concern, around my brother being a possible at-risk prisoner on admission, given his history and background in our family history. So he should have been treated with more care. They didn't maintain appropriate records in accordance to the state acts. And then also it looked at the way our family were treated. Remember, I was telling you how, we were being turned away. We were being told that Wayne wasn't at the hospital and that they'd, given him another name. So that was on purpose, we found out through this report. To essentially protect us from getting to our own brother, which is obviously disgusting. So coming from these findings, the Ombudsman actually said and recommended that the state, David Brown, who's the head of corrections, and I guess corrections as a whole, apologise to us. And he made that finding 4 times, that recommendation 4 times, sorry. So, we've since received an apology letter from the state. It's less than adequate. It's actually kind of a kick in the face, if I'm honest. And we're demanding that he actually meet us face-to-face here in South Australia and give us his formal apology kind of more publicly to our family and to our community. And we'll keep demanding that as well throughout the inquest moving forward because, they need to humanise us. They need to ensure that they're accountable and that they're not saying that they stand by their actions, essentially, that they're actually sorry, and show us that they want to see us enough and, to humanise our grief and trauma for my family. So, quite a bit's happened, and I would love to go through the report a bit more thoroughly with you at another time, for sure. One of the good things that he did do was, speak to the Royal Commission into deaths in custody from 91, and he done that really thoroughly and, definitely advocated for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and families who have passed in prisons, and our families doing the work now. And that was something I was really proud of him of doing. I'm okay half-half with the report, but we'll talk more about that another time.
No, but that's good that because it is important for listeners to know about the Ombudsman. I mean, obviously the Ombudsman can't really do too much, but at least the Ombudsman was able to report the shortcomings of the correctional system.
Yeah, absolutely. And look at maybe some of the details that the coroner won't get to look at. While it's our evidence about how we were treated and the suspicion that grew because of that and the hiding and the, not sharing of information, the way that corrections were actually kept out of the prison when they went to investigate. Sorry, the investigators were kept out of the prison when they actually tried to start their investigation and make it a crime scene. There's certain things that the coroners just can't look at, but that are just as important as an overall picture of the case and about the suspicion of what happened. So, we're really grateful that it did happen. But, you can't always get exactly what you want when it's the state, and we can't put our trust in the state to give us justice because I don't think that the state is just. And I don't think that that's where justice lies. So we take everything with a grain of salt, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that what's important to note here, even though the apology is inadequate, is that South Australia was ordered to apologise to the family, to your family, after the report of the State Ombudsman, which is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of apologies, again, it's accountability. And so what I've said as part of my statement essentially is that in many ways this offers a type of accountability mechanism. We're not holding them accountable to the degree that we need by any means, but essentially we may never get any corrections officers in future apologising to us. We may never get statements, that actually feel for what we've been through. Moving forward, in many ways, we're invisibilised in the process. And different people have spoken about that, kind of what happens during the coroner's courts and how, including myself in my own research, about how the coroner, the lawyers, all these state players and agencies, they get the power to construct who we are at that time. So the fact that somebody like David Brown, the head of corrections, has to come to us and apologise, that's a really big deal in terms of acknowledging our existence, acknowledging that we have power now, that we have a stance and that we are actually worth something, that our lives do matter in some way. I'm not saying that that's what corrections are saying, because they don't agree, but, there's movement here, and it's important that we're capturing it.
Indeed it is. And the thing that really is deplorable here, Latoya, is that your brother died after being restrained by 14 guards. 14 guards.
Yeah. Well, actually, in all honesty, there's about 19 plaintiffs who were the ones taking the coroner to court, trying to overthrow the coroner, which people can listen to in our previous conversations. That's 18 corrections plus a nurse who, in my opinion, acted unlawfully and against their own practices and policies in many ways, which is constantly being shown by their statements already saying, we didn't even know that existed, or we didn't even know that was our duty. That's a lot of people who are untrained. That's a lot of people who are untrained still right now in the prisons because nobody's lost their jobs, who are looking after many, many prisoners in South Australia. We were the third highest incarcerator in the last 10 years of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And so, the fact is that those people right now are untrained, largely don't care about black lives, let alone other people's lives. In the state of COVID-19, we've seen what's happening in Brisbane, in Melbourne, in Sydney, in the prisons. Those people are right now. So what does happen in our case right now does affect those people looking after people in prisons. And that makes me feel a little bit better. But obviously there's always going to be a bit of me that's really angry and really upset. I just don't always get the opportunity to show that. I mean, George Floyd passed. Many other Aboriginal people have passed in the same way as George Floyd, and just actually last week another American person, I can't name him at the moment, but he passed wearing a spit hood exactly the same way as Wayne. So the fact is that, again, this isn't a located issue, this is a global issue, and there's so many parts of our case that overlap constantly, just like David Dungay's with George Floyd's death, and murder. And so while I can't say that my brother was murdered, I'm sure that other people can piece together their own kind of pictures of what's happening at the moment.
Absolutely, and it's true. There's so many parallels, like all over the world. I mean, like I can't breathe. Like there's, sorry, I'm not. It's just crazy.
Yeah, spithood and restraint asphyxiation is one of the main causes of death of people in prisons, and essentially, continually, we're told as family members in public that, they brought it upon themselves. We're charging people guilty after death. People are being given, death sentences after their death. That's how they're being seen. And in many ways, we can go into it. Or scholars who are not me, many bigger people who are like, the Gary Foleys of the world and just incredible Aboriginal people and historians and academics, they speak to these issues really thoroughly.
So do you, though, Latoya. You're an academic.
I'm a baby academic, but they speak to these issues in terms of what I've learned from them is like, incarcerating sovereignty, extinguishing sovereignty. These issues don't happen in a vacuum, and, this idea of asphyxiation, taking the breath out of people, that's just such a significant point to what's happening with death in custody. Why is it?
It's all interconnected, isn't it?
It's all interconnected, yeah. You can't really separate it. Looking at, ideas of intersectionality, you can't separate race from class and gender and other issues, Like I was just listening to Belinda, and shout out to the family of Tanya Day. You can't separate what's happening in wider Australia towards Aboriginal women, the most incarcerated people in the world, in Australia. And yet there you go with people not taking responsibility, and there's no accountability. But that's what we have to keep pushing for. You can't separate out the issues when it comes to these kinds of issues.
I'm glad you were able to listen to some of Belinda's interview, actually. I'd strongly recommend that you listen to it when the podcast comes out.
Yeah, I would love to. I think everybody needs to kind of seize this moment of what's really happening and take a step back and start educating each other as well, and start sharing the stories even more so, not only on media but with our own families and communities. Because I think that from me just sitting back and watching, this is a really different time. And I'm only 28, so I'm quite young, and maybe it's come before me again, but I just feel like something is changing. And it's kind of, we're in this preparation time in many ways.
What do you mean changing? Anyway. What do you think is changing?
Well, in 2016, with my own brother's death in custody and the protests that followed, even with public discourse, we were the first in Australia to hold an Aboriginal death in custody Black Lives Matter rally. And in that time, we brought together numerous families, like Miss Juice's family, like Dylan Voller's family, because Dylan Voller was incarcerated at the time as well. We really looked at state-sanctioned brutality and violence by Australian police and corrections on the whole, and linked that to global cases. And in that time, on that same day, in solidarity with us, and us in solidarity with other groups around America, 40 different communities actually read out our statements about Black Lives Matter in Australia for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people particularly. And so at our protest, though, we had about, for Adelaide, 500, I would say, showed up that day, which is huge here. Huge, massive. I think we had about maybe 700 in Melbourne, because I flew there the next day to do that rally, and it was raining, so it was terrible weather. We had it inside of that hall. What's the Union place? I can't remember. I'm sorry. It's like so prominent.
The Union, yep.
Trades Hall. There you go.
That's right. Trades Hall, yep.
Yeah, and then I went to Sydney the weekend after that, and we went down to the west, and we had 2 rallies there, and they pulled about, I would say, 150 at one of them, and I think about reported 200 at the other. Now, come to this year, and what we've just seen happen with hundreds of thousands of people marching right across Australia for Black Lives. Right there, I guess that's a big change. But I think more publicly, people are talking about it on the news, people are writing about it. People are largely exploiting the Black Death in Custody movement, I think, at the moment for their own gain. But in saying that, oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, when you've got just various, policing organisations as well that are trying to come out and say that they support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, that's exploitation when, in fact, behind the scenes, again, just with South Australia particularly, we just hired hundreds of new police, So that's not moving towards abolition, that's moving against abolition in many ways, I think. But in saying that, the fact is that means that it's in the public discourse, and that means that people are talking about it, which means that people are being educated on it, right? And that's a great place to start. I think Australia has such a long history of sweeping things under the national rug, and when they're exposed, I think that that's always a good thing.
Absolutely, and you've touched on something really important here, and that is that there is a lot of manipulation at the moment with not just policing organisations, but also a lot of the fascism and the right-wing rising at the moment. And
Absolutely.
This stuff happens when there's economic oppression.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously COVID-19 has a lot to do with that. But, yeah, the rise of the right-wing white supremacists, I've spoken, I think, to you before. We've got a Nazi youth group here in the Adelaide Hills that have been active on and off, just public displays of swastikas, and they're not big at all. They're not, achieving much. But, it keeps going. It keeps rising during these times. So that says to me that we are doing something, hey? We are making
that's right.
The fact that we have people who are being, affected by our actions and our positive behaviours towards supporting communities. So, yeah, that's always going to be a thing. But, yeah, we've just got to, I think, watch out for when we are thinking about abolition, when we are thinking about Black Lives Matter, that absolutely is not about incorporating police into movements. It's not about, reconsidering and redefining how we do justice inside prisons. I'm definitely not advocating. I don't think anybody should be advocating for prison reform. But this is absolutely a time to get it right and to think abolition. And so, yeah, some of it I think is being co-opted. But there's, we've just got to watch the space at the moment, I think. We're doing our best. And yeah.
Absolutely, Latoya. And I think it's fantastic that we've been able to go a step further and talk about that. Now, we're just about finished with our show, but I just wanted to quickly say, Latoya, that the coronial inquiry into your brother's death's been delayed by legal challenges from prison guards, as you said, who failed in their bid to have the coroner removed and in claiming privilege against giving evidence. And it's now been delayed again until 2021.
That's correct. Yeah, so they lost their bid, to have the coroner removed. They still have to show up in court. They still have to give evidence. There is a point where they will have to, the lawyers watch what they say, essentially. In layman's terms, they'll have to think about the questions they're posing, and the corrections officers will get, or their lawyers will get the opportunity to intervene on each question to ask if they have to answer it or not, on what basis. But they have to build that basis of why they don't have to answer it. So in many ways, they still have to go through another process to be able to not speak. Our lawyers will be able to handle that when it comes. But yeah,
absolutely.
Not till 2021. This is going to be 5 years since my brother's death till we even finish the coroner's inquest, and how long after that will the report be?
How deplorable. Latoya, let's keep fighting. We've got about a minute left of the show. Thank you so much for coming on, and let's talk to you very soon.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. And again, all respect and solidarity for your work and everybody in Melbourne through this time.
You take care. Thanks a lot, Latoya.
Okay.
Bye. Bye-bye.
What we're dealing with here is a total lack of respect for the law.
Tune in to Done by Law.
An informal and irreverent look at the law. Critical insights and analysis from diverse community perspectives.
Done by Law, 6 p.m. Tuesdays.
And you're back with the Doing Time show. We don't have time for the black fella, white fella song today for Rumpy Band. It's goodbye from Morison, and thank you to both our guests for coming in. Thanks so much. See you next week.